Okay, so you've brought in quite a collection for us today. Episode recaps, production secrets, even some fan theories. It's quite a lot.
It is.
But that's what we do here, right? Dive deep into all of it and try to separate the real insights from the noise.
Absolutely.
Today we're tackling a really pivotal moment in the X-Files. The abduction of Agent Dana Scully from the episode Ascension.
Right.
It's not just any episode. It's a major turning point in the entire mythology of the show.
It really is. We're talking about an episode that first aired back on October 21st, 1994. And with these sources, we can really piece together a full picture of what makes this episode so essential to understanding the whole X-Files universe. All those alien encounters, government conspiracies, it all really comes together in Ascension.
Okay, so Ascension picks up right where Duane Barry left off. Scully's just left Mulder a message about that metallic implant. Remember that? It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, a key piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. And suddenly she's in danger. Duane Barry, the same guy who took Mulder hostage earlier, shows up and breaks into her apartment.
And the sources really stress how fast and violent everything is. The break-in, the attack, the kidnapping. He even steals her car and her gun.
It's intense right from the start.
Yeah, a really brutal opening that just grabs you and makes you terrified for Scully.
It definitely does. And then Mulder comes home, finds her message cut off abruptly. You hear that shattering glass, her screaming. It's chilling.
It really gets under your skin.
It does. Then Scully's mother, Margaret, shows up and tells Mulder about this recurring dream she's been having, about Scully being taken away.
Yeah. It's almost like she knew, isn't it?
A premonition or something. It really adds to the unsettling feeling of the whole thing. So the next morning at FBI headquarters, Skinner briefs everyone about the search for Scully and Duane Barry. But then, get this, he takes Mulder off the case.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag right there.
It is. And he assigns Krycek to take Mulder home. Now, as we know, Krycek's not exactly the most trustworthy guy.
Not at all. It really makes you wonder what Skinner's true motivations were. Was he trying to protect Mulder? Or was he already under pressure from those shadowy forces we keep seeing?
The sources definitely hinted something more going on there.
They do. It throws everything into question and makes you wonder who you can actually trust.
Meanwhile, Barry's driving through Virginia in Scully's car. He gets pulled over by a state trooper on Route 229. Seems routine at first, but then the officer sees blood in the car and hears Scully banging on the trunk.
Oh.
Barry panics and shoots the officer dead. Things get very real very quickly.
No kidding. Up until this point, it was a kidnapping, horrible as that is. Now it's a potential murder investigation.
The stakes just got a whole lot higher.
Yeah, and Barry is clearly not in control. He's acting impulsively, dangerously, makes the whole situation even more volatile.
Back at headquarters, Mulder's sidelined, but he's not giving up. He's going over the recording of his conversation with Barry from the travel agency. And this where things get interesting.
Yeah, Mulder's intuition is on fire in this episode.
It is. With Krycek helping, he rewinds the tape to a phrase Barry kept repeating. Ascend to the stars. Turns out that's the slogan for Skyland Mountain, right there in the phone book.
Right. Even with all the pressure and worry about Scully, Mulder still manages to pick up on that little detail. But here's the thing. We also see Krycek working behind Mulder's back. While pretending to help, he's actually communicating with the smoking man.
Classic Krycek.
It really shows you the extent of the deception going on. This isn't just a case. It's a web of lies and manipulation.
So they head to Skyland Mountain, and Krycek's doing everything he can to delay Mulder. But Mulder is laser-focused, completely determined. They find out Barry was there and probably took the tram to the summit. And wouldn't you know it, the tram has brand new untested cables?
Oh, wow. A recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and it foreshadows what's about to happen. Mulder's not waiting an hour for the next tram. He forces the operator to take him up right then, leaving Krycek behind. The tram scene is just incredible, so tense.
I know. Krycek trying to sabotage the tram, shutting down the power. Mulder climbing on the roof. You're on the edge of your seat the whole time.
It really is. And you realize just how far both of them are willing to go. Mulder's determination to find Scully is so powerful, he's risking his life.
And almost falls to his death. It's a brilliant way to build suspense. Confined space, ticking clock. It's a race against time.
When Mulder reaches the summit, it's like a punch in the gut. Scully's car is there, abandoned, blood on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
And then he finds her cross necklace in the trunk, covered in blood.
It's devastating.
Right when you think it can't get any worse, a blinding light appears. And out of the light comes Duane Barry looking almost happy, and he says, they took her.
It's like a roller coaster of emotions. On the one hand, you have the blood, the necklace. It all points towards something terrible happening to Scully. But then you have Barry saying she was abducted, which throws everything into question again.
It does. It leaves you wondering what really happened to her. Was it violent crime or something far more unexplainable? So Mulder interrogates Barry, and it gets really intense. Mulder, understandably, doesn't buy the alien abduction story. He practically chokes Barry, trying to get the truth out of him. Barry insists he made a deal he gave them Scully in exchange for them leaving him alone.
And here's where things get really interesting. Barry catches a glimpse of Krycek outside with two other men, and one of them looks a lot like a younger version of Bill Mulder, Mulder's own father.
Wow.
This detail adds another layer of intrigue to the whole conspiracy. Was Barry just a pawn in a much bigger game? The sources definitely suggest that's a possibility.
They do. It makes you think about who's really pulling the strings. But Mulder, focused on Scully, completely misses this little detail. He sees Scully's hair on Barry's wristband and just snaps. In that moment, all he sees is red. As Mulder's leaving, Barry apologizes, almost desperately, and he mumbled something about tests.
Those little comments from Barry, they're so unsettling. They stick with you. They make you realize that there's so much more going on than meets the eye.
It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
Exactly. And while all of this is happening, we get a brief but disturbing glimpse of Scully. She's unconscious, totally vulnerable, and they're doing some kind of experiment on her. There are these tubes, these strange devices. It's very unsettling.
Yeah, that scene's hard to watch.
It is. It confirms that Scully's definitely been taken and that they're doing something to her, whether it's aliens or the government or some combination of the two. It's left open to interpretation.
Classic X-Files.
Absolutely. That ambiguity is part of what makes the show so compelling.
Okay, so Mulder's back from that disturbing vision, and he's more suspicious of Krycek than ever. He explicitly tells Krycek to keep everyone away from Barry. But then, as he's coming back, he catches Krycek talking to Barry.
Busted.
Krycek tries to play it off like Barry was choking, but it's obvious he's lying. And then, just as things are getting really tense, Skinner shows up. And right then, Barry starts convulsing and dies. It all happened so fast.
Right in front of them.
It's like that. Mulder thinks it was poison, and I have to say it's a pretty good theory. The doctor refuses to release any details about the autopsy, something about military involvement. Just adds fuel to the fire.
Right. Mulder's suspicions about a cover-up just keep growing.
It's a classic case of they don't want you to know the truth. Back FBI headquarters, both Mulder and Krycek are ordered to take polygraph tests. Meanwhile, Krycek meets with the smoking man and suggests that they just get rid of Mulder for good. But the smoking man says no. He says that killing Mulder would turn one man's religion into a crusade.
That's a telling moment, isn't it? It shows just how much the smoking man understands Mulder. He knows that Mulder is driven by his beliefs, by his faith in the truth. And he knows that killing Mulder would only make him a martyr, a symbol for others to rally around.
It really highlights the ideological battle at the heart of the show. Truth versus power, belief versus cynicism.
Exactly. And it's a battle that plays out time and again throughout the series.
So Mulder's discouraged from following up on a lead with Senator Matheson by X. But then, he finds something in Krycek's car. The smoking man's cigarette butts. The same brand he always smokes.
The evidence is right there in front of him.
He finally sees that Krycek's been playing him the whole time.
Yeah.
Mulder reports Krycek, but then Krycek disappears. Vanishes into thin air. It's like he was never there. But then there's a glimmer of hope. Skinner announces that he's officially reopening the X-Files.
Finally. It's a win for Mulder, even amidst all the darkness.
It is. It's like a validation of everything he's been fighting for. And then there's this really touching scene where Mulder meets with Margaret Scully. She gives him Scully's necklace, asks him to give it back to her when he finds her. She also tells him that she had the recurring dream again, and Mulder takes that as a sign that Scully's still alive. The episode ends with Mulder back at Skyland Mountain, standing alone looking up at the stars. Scully's absence is so strongly felt in that final shot. It's a powerful ending.
Haunting and hopeful at the same time. It sums up the essence of the X-Files so perfectly. The loss, the mystery, the never-ending search for the truth.
Now, I think it would be great to delve into some of the behind-the-scenes stories surrounding Ascension. Our sources have some really intriguing information about how this pivotal episode came to be. It's almost like looking back in a piece of history, especially knowing the huge impact it had on the show.
Absolutely. It's fascinating to see how real-life events shaped the show's direction. For instance, did you know that Scully's abduction was actually a result of Gillian Anderson's pregnancy? She was expecting her first child during the first season.
Oh, way.
Yeah. There were some initial concerns about how to handle it, but the showrunners were determined to keep Gillian on the show. They wanted to find a way to work around her pregnancy rather than write her out altogether.
They really went above and beyond to keep the character central.
They did. Can you imagine how different things might have been if they'd gone with some of the other ideas they had? Like Scully giving birth to an alien baby?
Whoa, that would have changed things for sure.
It would have. It's a testament to the writer's creativity that they were able to turn this real-life situation into such a pivotal moment for the show. Scully's abduction wasn't just a temporary fix, it became a cornerstone of the X-Files mythology.
It really shows how committed they were to crafting a great story, even when faced with unexpected challenges. And to think, Scully only appears in 2 short scenes in Ascension, and she's not even in the next episode at all.
It's a testament to how well they integrated her absence into the plot. It created this sense of urgency and mystery that drove the entire story forward.
I also read that there was a bit of controversy about the scene where Scully's shown in the trunk of the car. Chris Carter, the creator of the show, really fought to keep that image in the episode. He felt it was important to show just how much danger she was in.
Yeah, it's a disturbing image, but it's effective. It gets the point across. And there's a reason why Carter is considered a master storyteller. He has a keen eye for detail and knows how to evoke strong emotions in the audience.
Another interesting thing is that Carter intentionally kept the details of Scully's experimentation pretty vague. He wanted to leave it open to interpretation, whether it was aliens or the government or something else entirely.
That ambiguity is such a hallmark of the X-Files. It keeps you guessing, keeps you thinking.
It does. You're never quite sure what to believe, which just draws you deeper into the mystery.
Right. And speaking of mystery, Ascension features some really great guest stars. Steve Railsback as Duane Barry, Nicholas Lea as Krycek, Stephen Williams as X, and Sheila Larkin as Margaret Scully. They all brought so much to their roles.
They did. The casting in The X-Files was always top-notch. They really knew how to find actors who could embody these complex characters and bring them to life.
Definitely. And the acting in this episode is particularly powerful. You really feel the fear, the desperation, the sense of urgency.
You mentioned the tram scene earlier. And it's amazing to think that David Duchovny actually did his own stunts for that scene. All that climbing and dangling high above the ground. It was filmed at Grouse Mountain in British Columbia, by the way.
Wow, that takes dedication.
It does. It's one thing to act out those scenes, but to actually perform them yourself at that height, it adds a whole new level of authenticity to the performance. And they filmed that whole sequence in just one day.
I read that too. Talk about a tight schedule.
It's incredible. Makes you appreciate all the hard work that went into making this episode. And it's not just the stunts, the locations are pretty impressive too. The driving scenes with Barry were filmed on Mount Seymour, which isn't too far from Grouse Mountain.
He really went all out to capture the beauty and ruggedness of the Pacific Northwest.
They did. And here's a fun fact for you. Ascension is the only episode of The X-Files where they changed the tagline from "The truth is out there" to "Deny everything."
Wow, I never noticed that. It's a small change, but it's really effective. It perfectly captures the tone of the episode, all the secrecy, the lies, the attempts to cover up the truth. It's all about denial.
It is. And it's interesting to learn that the writers were inspired by a real place when they created Skyland Mountain. They based it on Skyline Drive in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia.
I can see the resemblance. All those winding roads and stunning views. It adds a layer of realism to the episode.
It does. It makes the story feel more grounded even though it's dealing with such extraordinary events. It's like the writers are saying that the truth could be lurking anywhere, even in the most beautiful and familiar places.
Exactly. And the line between reality and fiction gets even blurrier when you consider that they used the actual Grouse Mountain skyride for the cable car scenes. They didn't build a set or use special effects. They were really up there, hundreds of feet in the air.
It makes those scenes even more terrifying, knowing that they were actually risking their lives to get those shots.
Definitely. It adds a level of authenticity that you just can't replicate with CGI.
And Nicholas Lea, who plays Krycek, he also did his own stunts for that brutal fight scene in the car. Apparently, he wanted to make it as realistic and intense as possible.
He really committed to the role, and it shows on screen.
It does. That fight scene is so raw and visceral, you can feel the anger and desperation in every punch. And speaking of Krycek, Ascension marks a real turning point for his character. Up until this point, his allegiances were somewhat ambiguous. But in this episode, it becomes clear that he's working for the Smoking Man.
He becomes a full-fledged antagonist, a real threat to Mulder.
His betrayal is pretty devastating, especially for Mulder. It's like another layer of loss on top of everything else he's dealing with.
Right. It's a personal betrayal that really cuts deep.
And then there's that brief but intense confrontation between Mulder and the smoking man in Skinner's office. It's their first real face-to-face encounter, and you can feel the tension between them.
It's like two forces colliding. Mulder, the believer, the seeker of truth, and the smoking man, the manipulator, the protector of secrets. It sets the stage for their ongoing battle throughout the series.
It does. And what's really remarkable about Scully's abduction is that it wasn't just a one-off event to deal with Gillian Anderson's pregnancy. It had a huge impact on the show's mythology and on Scully's character arc.
Absolutely. It's the catalyst for so many things that happen later on. That mysterious implant, the medical problems she faces, her ongoing struggle to reconcile her scientific beliefs with the extraordinary things she experiences. It all stems from her abduction.
It really shaped her journey and made her an even stronger, more complex character.
It did. And it raised so many questions about the nature of alien abduction, the role of the government in covering it up, and the very nature of truth itself.
Those are questions that continue to resonate with viewers even today. It's part of what makes The X-Files so timeless. And it's all thanks to Ascension.
It's a truly pivotal episode that changed the course of the show.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Ascension, it's clear that this episode was much more than just a thrilling hour of television. It was a game changer. It deepened our understanding of the characters, expanded the mythology, and left us with so many lingering questions.
It did. And that's the beauty of The X-Files, isn't it? It always leaves you wanting more. Even with all the information we've uncovered today, there are still so many mysteries to ponder.
Exactly. And that's why we're here to keep digging, to keep exploring, to keep seeking the truth, no matter where it leads.
To the truth.